Maya Chen sat in the corner of the academy cafeteria, picking at her protein cube while the other students laughed and pointed in her direction. The Zephyrian twins, Kex and Vex, were performing their usual routine of mocking the primitive human for their entertainment. "Look at her tiny frame," Kex chittered, his forearms gesturing dramatically. "How did such a weak species even survive their home planet? No wonder Earth fell so easily to the Dominion forces." The other alien students erupted in laughter. A crystalline being named Shards chimed in with a voice like breaking glass. "I heard humans can't even regenerate limbs. What pathetic evolution!" Maya kept her eyes down, continuing to eat mechanically. She had heard worse during her 3 months at the Galactic Military Academy on Nexus Prime. Being the only human among 2,000 alien cadets made her an easy target. The instructors barely tolerated her presence, and the students treated her like an amusing pet. "Hey, Earthworm," called out Bracken, a massive Thorian whose rocky hide scraped against his chair as he stood. "My species conquered 12 star systems before we even developed faster-than-light travel. What did your people accomplish? Making primitive flying machines?" More laughter echoed through the hall. Maya finally looked up, her dark eyes meeting Bracken's glowing orange orbs. For just a moment, something flickered in her gaze that made the Thorian step back slightly. But then she looked away again and the moment passed. "She's probably going to cry," whispered Lisa, a snake-like serpentine whose scales shimmered with amusement. "Humans are so emotional and weak." Maya stood slowly, gathering her tray. As she walked toward the waste disposal, she passed the table full of her tormentors. Bracken reached out with one massive arm, blocking her path. "Where are you going, little human? Don't you want to defend your pathetic species?" Maya looked up at him calmly. "Excuse me, please. I need to get to combat training." This brought another round of laughter. "Combat training?" Kex shrieked. "What are you going to do, bite someone's ankle?" The instructor, a stern Altarian named Commander Zool, chose that moment to enter the cafeteria. His metallic voice cut through the noise like a blade. "All cadets report to Training Bay 7 immediately. Today we begin live combat simulations." As the students filed out, chattering excitedly about the upcoming exercises, Maya followed quietly at the back. She had been dreading this day since arriving at the academy. Combat simulations would only give her classmates more opportunities to humiliate her. Training Bay 7 was enormous, filled with holographic projectors and adaptive terrain generators. The cadets gathered in a loose circle as Commander Zool began his briefing. "Today you will be tested in small unit tactics," he announced. "You will be divided into teams and face various combat scenarios. Your performance will determine your ranking for the rest of the term." Maya's heart sank as the teams were announced. She was grouped with Bracken, the Zephyrian twins, and 2 other students who had made her life miserable. They looked at her with obvious disgust. "Great," muttered Vex. "We're stuck with the human anchor. There goes our chance at a decent score." Their first scenario materialized around them. An urban warfare simulation set on a war-torn planet. Buildings rose from the floor as enemy combatants, represented by advanced combat drones, took positions throughout the area. "Objective is simple," Commander Zool's voice echoed through the bay. "Eliminate all hostile forces and secure the central command post. You have 30 minutes. Bracken immediately took charge, his military training from his home world evident in his tactical knowledge. "Kex and Vex, take the eastern flank. Yorak and Finns move west. I'll advance through the center." He looked at Maya with disdain. "Human, you stay back and try not to get in our way. Maybe provide some kind of distraction if we need it." The team moved out, leaving Maya crouched behind a low wall near their starting position. She watched through her tactical display as her teammates engaged the enemy drones. They were skilled fighters, she had to admit. Bracken's strength allowed him to tear through obstacles, while the twins used their agility to flank enemy positions. But something was wrong. Maya's enhanced hearing, a modification all Academy students received, picked up sounds the others missed. Her tactical training from years past automatically analyzed the battle patterns, and she realized the simulation was more complex than her teammates understood. "Bracken," she called over the comm. "There's a secondary force moving in from the north. They're trying to surround you." "Shut up, human," Bracken's voice crackled back. "We don't need tactical advice from someone whose species lost their entire planet." Maya bit her tongue and continued watching. Sure enough, 3 minutes later, Bracken's confident advance was cut short as enemy drones swarmed his position from an unexpected angle. His team found themselves pinned down in a crossfire. "This is impossible," Kex shouted over the comm. "These drones are using advanced tactics." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, feeling old instincts awakening. Memories she had tried to bury began to surface. The weight of command, the responsibility of lives, the terrible mathematics of war. "I can help," she said quietly into her comm. "What?" Bracken's voice was strained as he returned fire. "I said I can help, but you need to listen to me." "Are you insane?" "You're just a human!" More drones appeared on Maya's tactical display. The situation was becoming desperate. Her teammates' life signs were showing stress indicators that suggested they might soon be eliminated from the simulation. Against her better judgment, Maya activated her comm on the command frequency. Her voice, when it came, carried an authority that seemed to come from nowhere. "All units, this is Maya. Bracken, you need to fall back to grid 7-7. Twins, break east and loop around to strike the enemy's weak point at grid 5-2. Yorak and Finns, hold position and provide covering fire." "Who put you in charge?" Bracken demanded, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Someone who knows how to win," Maya replied simply. "Trust me, or fail the simulation, your choice." For a moment, the comm was silent except for the sounds of combat. Then, reluctantly, Bracken began to move according to Maya's instructions. The twins followed suit, and within minutes, the tide of battle began to turn. Maya's tactical commands were precise and effective. She guided her teammates through complex maneuvers, anticipated enemy movements, and coordinated attacks with the skill of someone who had done this many times before. When the simulation ended with their victory, the bay fell silent. The other cadets stared at Maya in confusion and shock. How had the weak human girl orchestrated such a flawless tactical victory? Commander Zul's metallic face was unreadable as he reviewed the combat data. "Interesting," he said finally. "Cadet Chen, where did you learn those tactics?" Maya's eyes met his, and for just a moment, that dangerous flicker appeared again. "I read a lot of military history books," she said quietly. But as she walked away from the training bay, several of her classmates noticed that her movements had changed. There was something different in the way she carried herself, something that spoke of experience and confidence that hadn't been there before. Bracken watched her go, a troubled expression on his rocky features. "That wasn't beginner's luck," he muttered to himself. "That was the work of someone who's actually commanded troops in battle." That night, in her small dormitory room, Maya sat on her narrow bed staring at a small hologram she kept hidden in her personal effects. The image showed a young woman in military dress uniform standing before a backdrop of stars. The nameplate read, "Colonel Maya Chen, 3rd Human Defense Corps." She touched the hologram gently, then deactivated it. Tomorrow, her classmates would probably go back to treating her like a curiosity and a weakling. They had no idea that the girl they mocked had once held the rank of colonel in the human military. They didn't know that before Earth's fall, she had commanded orbital defense platforms and led successful campaigns against impossible odds. Most importantly, they had no idea what she was truly capable of when pushed too far. As Maya settled down to sleep, she tried to push away the memories that the day's combat simulation had awakened. She had come to the academy to start over, to be just another student learning the basics of galactic warfare. But deep down, she knew that her past would eventually catch up with her. The question was, what would happen when it did? 3 weeks after the combat simulation, Maya had managed to return to her quiet routine of avoiding attention. Her classmates seemed to have forgotten about her tactical display, dismissing it as luck, or perhaps some basic human cunning. The mockery continued, though Bracken had been notably less aggressive since that day. Maya was reviewing stellar navigation charts in the library when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "The hegemony is planning another major offensive," whispered Cadet Zelox, a 6-armed insectoid from the Mantis cluster. "My father serves in the intelligence division. They're targeting the Kepler colonies next." "Those human settlements?" asked his study partner, a floating jellyfish-like being called Fluvia. "Why bother? The humans are already defeated." "Exactly why they're perfect targets," Zelox chittered softly. "Easy victories to boost morale. The plan is to make examples of the colonies. No survivors, complete orbital bombardment." Maya's hands tightened on her datapad until the material began to crack. The Kepler colonies housed nearly 2 million human civilians, mostly refugees from Earth and other conquered worlds. They were defenseless farming communities, protected only by aging defense platforms and a handful of patrol ships. She forced herself to keep reading, but her mind was racing. The Kepler colonies included New Geneva, where her younger brother Daniel had been relocated after Earth fell. He was working as a teacher there, trying to help human children maintain some connection to their heritage. That night, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling of her dormitory room. She could report what she had overheard to the Academy authorities, but who would listen to her? She was just a human cadet with no credibility. Even if they believed her, the Galactic Council had proven repeatedly that they cared little for human lives. The next morning brought an unexpected announcement. Commander Zul's voice echoed through the Academy corridors during the morning briefing. "All senior cadets will participate in a special war games exercise next week. You will be divided into opposing forces and compete in a large-scale tactical simulation. This exercise will determine your final rankings and potential placement in the Galactic Defense Corps." Maya barely heard the rest of the announcement. A desperate plan was forming in her mind, one that would require her to break every rule she had followed since arriving at the Academy. During the following days, she quietly gathered information about the war games. The exercise would use the Academy's most advanced simulation system, one that was connected to the broader Galactic Defense Network for realism. More importantly, it would give her access to communication systems that could reach beyond the Academy. When the war games began, Maya found herself assigned to the enemy force, commanded by Bracken and several of the Academy's top students. Their objective was to defend a simulated star system against an attacking fleet led by the instructors. As the simulation began, Maya waited for her moment. While her teammates focused on the immediate tactical situation, she quietly accessed a secondary communication console. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency as she began slicing through the Academy's security protocols. Years of military training had taught her skills that went far beyond basic tactics. Before Earth fell, she had worked closely with intelligence operatives and cyber warfare specialists. She still remembered the access codes and hidden pathways in the Galactic Communication Network. "What are you doing, human?" The voice came from behind her. Maya turned to see Lisa, the Serpentine cadet, watching her with suspicious golden eyes. "Running diagnostic checks on our communication array," Maya replied calmly. "We're getting interference on several channels." Lisa slithered closer, her forked tongue tasting the air. "That's not what it looks like to me. Those are high-level system accesses." Maya's hand moved smoothly to her sidearm. In one fluid motion, she drew the training weapon and aimed it at Lisa's center mass. The Serpentine's eyes widened in shock. You're going to sit quietly and not say a word, Maya said, her voice carrying the cold authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. If you alert the others, I'll stun you and explain to the instructors that you suffered an equipment malfunction. Lisa stared at the human girl who had suddenly transformed from a meek victim into a dangerous predator. The change was so complete and terrifying that she could only nod silently. Maya returned to her work, her fingers flying across the console. She bypassed 3 more security layers before finding what she needed, a direct connection to the Hegemony military communication network. Within minutes, she had accessed classified battle plans and confirmed Zelox's information. The attack on the Kepler colonies was scheduled to begin in 72 hours. 12 Hegemony battleships were already moving into position, supported by fighter wings and orbital bombardment platforms. But Maya wasn't content with just confirming the threat. She began uploading something into the Hegemony's own tactical database, detailed defensive strategies for the Kepler colonies, information about the attackers' likely approaches, weapons specifications, and most importantly, the exact timing of the assault. Then she did something even more dangerous. She accessed the personnel files of every Hegemony ship commander involved in the planned attack. As she read through their service records, her expression grew darker with each passing minute. Captain Vorthak of the HSS Dominator had led the assault on the Titan research station, where 300 human scientists were killed, despite having surrendered. Commander Zilith had personally ordered the execution of human prisoners during the Battle of Proxima. Admiral Krethos had developed the scorched earth tactics used against civilian populations. Maya's fingers hesitated over the keyboard for only a moment. Then she began inputting new data into the Hegemony fleet's navigation computers. Subtle changes to star charts, minor adjustments to hyperspace calculations, small modifications that would not be noticed until it was too late. "Maya!" Bracken's voice boomed across the simulation bay. "What's your status on those communications?" "Almost finished," she called back, making a few final keystrokes. "We should have clear channels in 30 seconds. As she stood up from the console, Lisa finally found her voice. "You're not just a cadet, are you?" she whispered. "That was professional-level cyber warfare." Maya looked at her with those dark eyes that no longer seemed quite so harmless. "You never saw anything," she said quietly. "And if you're smart, you'll never mention this conversation." The rest of the war games passed without incident. Maya returned to her role as a quiet background student, following orders and avoiding attention. But inside, she was counting down the hours until the Hegemony fleet reached the Kepler colonies. 2 days later, the Academy's communication networks buzzed with confused reports. The Hegemony's assault force had suffered catastrophic navigation failures during their approach to the Kepler system. 3 battleships had collided during formation flying due to corrupted sensor data. 2 more had dropped out of hyperspace in the wrong sector entirely, but that was only the beginning. When the confused and scattered attackers finally arrived at their target, they found the human colonies ready for them. Defensive platforms that should have been easy targets had been repositioned to maximize their coverage. Civilian evacuation plans had been implemented with stunning efficiency. Most shocking of all, a small but determined human defense force was waiting for them with tactics that suggested detailed advanced knowledge of the attack plan. The battle was still brutal and one-sided, but instead of the complete massacre the Hegemony had planned, they faced unexpected resistance. Hundreds of thousands of human lives were saved, and several Hegemony ships were damaged or destroyed before the surviving defenders finally fell. In the Academy cafeteria, students clustered around news feeds trying to understand what had happened. The official reports blamed intelligence failures and communication errors for the Hegemony's difficulties. "How did the humans know we were coming?" Kex wondered aloud. "Their defense was too organized to be random." "Maybe they have better intelligence networks than we thought," suggested Vex. Bracken shook his massive head. "No, this was something else. Someone with access to our systems gave them advance warning. Across the cafeteria, Maya sat alone at her usual table, eating her protein cube in silence. None of her classmates noticed the small smile that briefly crossed her lips as she watched the news reports. But Commander Zool noticed. The Altarian instructor had been reviewing the Academy's system logs, and he had found some very interesting anomalies from the War Games exercise. Access attempts that required skills far beyond what any cadet should possess. Security bypasses that spoke of professional training. As he watched Maya Chen eating quietly in the corner, he began to wonder just who this simple human girl really was. That night, Maya stood at her dormitory window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, her brother Daniel was safe. The Kepler colonies had suffered losses, but they had survived. And in the hegemony command structure, there would be questions, investigations, and paranoia about how their security had been compromised. She touched the window glass gently, thinking of all the human worlds that had fallen, all the lives that could have been saved if she had acted sooner. But she also knew that what she had done was only the beginning. The weak, mocked human girl was gone. In her place stood someone with the skills, knowledge, and motivation to strike back at those who had crushed her people. The question now was how long she could maintain her disguise and what she would do when her true nature was finally revealed. Maya smiled grimly at her reflection in the window. Let them underestimate her a while longer. She had work to do. Commander Zool's investigation took 3 weeks to bear fruit. When it did, the results were more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Maya was in advanced xenobiology class, quietly taking notes on crystalline physiology, when the Academy's security forces surrounded the building. Through the transparasteel windows, she could see armed guards taking positions at every exit. "All students remain in your seats," announced the instructor, Professor Zenth, his tentacles writhing nervously. "There appears to be a security situation." Maya didn't look up from her notes, but her enhanced hearing picked up the heavy footsteps approaching down the corridor. She had been expecting this moment for weeks, ever since the Kepler incident. The only surprise was that it had taken them this long to trace the cyber intrusion back to her. The classroom door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Commander Zool entered, flanked by 4 security officers and someone Maya recognized from intelligence briefings. Director Voss of Galactic Intelligence, a pale humanoid with cybernetic implants covering half his face. "Cadet Maya Chen," Commander Zool's metallic voice echoed through the suddenly silent classroom. "You will come with us immediately." Maya set down her stylus carefully and stood. As she walked toward the front of the classroom, she could feel every alien eye watching her with a mixture of confusion and fear. The quiet human girl who they had mocked and dismissed was apparently dangerous enough to warrant a major security response. "Is this really necessary?" she asked calmly, nodding toward the heavily armed escort. Director Voss studied her with his organic eye, the cybernetic one glowing softly as it scanned her for weapons. "That depends entirely on who you really are, Miss Chen, or should I say Colonel Chen?" A ripple of shocked whispers ran through the classroom. Maya maintained her calm expression, but inside she felt a familiar cold settling over her thoughts. The mask was finally coming off. They escorted her through the academy corridors to a high-security briefing room she had never seen before. As they walked, Maya noticed that word of her arrest was spreading rapidly. Students and instructors pressed against windows and doorways to catch a glimpse of the human girl who had somehow fooled everyone. The briefing room was stark and windowless, dominated by a large holographic projector and surrounded by recording devices. They seated her at a metal table across from Commander Zool and Director Voss, while the security guards took positions by the door. "Let's start with the basics," Director Voss said, activating a data pad. "According to our records, you are Maya Chen, age 19, from the destroyed colony world of New Shanghai, orphaned during the fall of Earth, admitted to this academy as part of the Human Integration Program. Maya nodded. That's correct. Except it's not, Commander Zool interjected. Show her, Director. The holographic projector activated, displaying Maya's image alongside military records that made the security guards shift nervously. The projection showed a woman in a formal military uniform standing before a backdrop of stars and crossed swords. Colonel Maya Chen, Director Voss read aloud, 3rd Human Defense Corps, Commanding Officer of Orbital Defense Platform Prometheus, Architect of the Siege of Vega Strategy, credited with 17 successful defensive actions against superior forces. He looked up at her. The youngest colonel in human military history. Maya studied the hologram of herself in uniform. That seems like a very long time ago. You were 25 when Earth fell, Voss continued. Hardly an old woman. Which raises the question, how did a decorated human military officer end up posing as a teenage academy cadet? For the first time since her arrest, Maya allowed a small smile to cross her lips. Have you looked closely at my medical records, Director? Voss frowned and consulted his datapad. His cybernetic eye whirred softly as it processed information. Age regression therapy, he said slowly. Experimental cellular regeneration. You volunteered for testing during the final stages of the Earth War. The process reduced my apparent age by 6 years, Maya explained calmly. A side effect was that it also erased most external signs of my military enhancements and cybernetic implants. I became, for all intents and purposes, a civilian teenager again. Commander Zool leaned forward, his metallic features reflecting the light from the projector. Why hide your identity? You could have enrolled as an adult student, used your military experience openly. Maya's expression hardened slightly. And been immediately suspected, monitored, and ultimately rejected? How many alien military academies do you think would willingly train a former human colonel, especially one who had killed as many hegemony soldiers as I have? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Director Voss checked his datapad again, his face growing pale. The Prometheus platform, he whispered. During the Battle of Centauri Prime, you held off an entire hegemony battle fleet for 18 hours with a single orbital defense station. 18 hours and 37 minutes, Maya corrected. Long enough for the civilian evacuation fleet to reach the hyperspace limit. The casualties, Voss continued reading. Hegemony losses included 4 battleships, 12 destroyers, and approximately 40,000 personnel. 41,312, Maya said quietly. I counted everyone. Commander Zool stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You're a war criminal. The hegemony has been looking for you for 3 years. Maya laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. A war criminal? For defending my own species? For protecting civilian evacuations? Tell me, Commander. What would you call the hegemony officers who ordered the bombardment of surrender beacons? What about the ones who used human prisoners as living shields? That's not the point, Voss interjected. You lied to gain admission to this academy. You hacked our systems. You compromised a hegemony military operation. I saved 2 million human lives, Maya replied simply. The Kepler colonies are still standing because of what I did. If that makes me a criminal in your eyes, so be it. The silence stretched for several minutes as her interrogators processed this information. Finally, Commander Zool spoke again. There's something else, isn't there? The other students, the way you let them mock you. Someone with your background wouldn't tolerate such treatment unless there was a greater purpose. Maya met his gaze steadily. You want to know why I'm really here? Why I endured months of humiliation and played the role of a weak, helpless human? She stood slowly, and despite being the smallest person in the room, her presence suddenly seemed to dominate the space. Because I needed to understand how the galaxy really works now. I needed to see how the victorious species treat the defeated ones. I needed to learn the weaknesses and blind spots of every major military force in the Galactic Alliance. Director Voss's cybernetic eye focused on her with new intensity. You're gathering intelligence. For 3 years, I've watched human survivors scattered across 1,000 worlds, treated as refugees and second-class citizens. I've seen children who will never know their own history, because it's too dangerous to teach it. I've watched proud human colonies reduced to agricultural settlements, forbidden from developing any technology that might be seen as threatening. Maya began to pace, her movements precise and controlled. Do you know what I learned during my time here? I learned that every species in this academy, every superior alien race, has forgotten what humans are truly capable of when we're not fighting each other. The war is over, Commander Zul said firmly. Humanity surrendered. The invasion is over, Maya corrected. The war hasn't even begun yet. The security guards tensed, hands moving to their weapons. But Maya made no threatening moves, continuing her measured pacing. You want to know what really happened at Kepler? She asked. It wasn't just about saving those colonies. It was a test, a proof of concept. I wanted to see if one human, with the right skills and knowledge, could still make a difference against impossible odds. She stopped pacing and faced her interrogators directly. The answer is yes. One person, properly positioned and sufficiently motivated, can accomplish remarkable things. Now imagine what 10 people could do, or 100, or 1,000 humans who remember what we once were. Director Voss stood slowly, his face grim. You're talking about rebellion, insurgency. I'm talking about survival, Maya replied. You think scattering humanity across the galaxy and treating us like defeated pets will make us disappear? You underestimate us. We adapt. We endure. And eventually, we remember how to fight. The room erupted as the security guards raised their weapons and Commander Zul began shouting orders. But Maya remained calm, her hands visible and empty. I won't resist arrest, she said clearly. I've learned what I came here to learn. The next phase of my education will have to take place elsewhere. As they moved to restrain her, Maya looked around the room one final time. You should know that the data I collected here has already been transmitted to certain interested parties. Everything about your defensive capabilities, training methods, and most importantly, your assumptions about human limitations. Director Voss stared at her in horror. How long have you been planning this? Maya smiled as the neural restraints locked around her wrists. Since the day Earth fell. You made one critical error in your conquest, Director. You left survivors, and survivors remember. As they led her away, Maya called back over her shoulder. Oh, and you might want to check on the other human students in your various military academies. I wasn't the only one with this idea. The door sealed behind them with a solid thunk, leaving Commander Zul and Director Voss staring at each other in stunned silence. How many? Voss whispered. How many other Maya Chens are out there? Neither of them had an answer. But across the galaxy, in dozens of military academies and training facilities, other quiet human students continued their studies. They attended classes, endured mockery, and quietly gathered the knowledge they would need for the long war ahead. The human girl who had once laid waste to entire provinces was finally revealed. But she was no longer alone, and in the years to come, the galaxy would learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been their weapons or their technology. It was their refusal to stay defeated. Maya Chen smiled as she was led to her cell. The real war was just beginning, and this time, humanity would be ready for it. They had learned from their defeat, adapted to their new circumstances, and most importantly, they had discovered something their enemies could never understand. Sometimes the greatest victory comes from appearing to lose everything.